My question is going to be about the Israel-Palestine issue, and let it be known that I'm not a big from the river to the sea kind of person. My question is about your claim about Israel always having its doors open to peace for a two-state solution, and I just don't think this narrative is true. I don't think that any Israeli prime minister since Yitzhak Rabin has really had their doors open for peace. And Yitzhak Rabin, the most open for peace Israeli prime minister of all time, was shot by an Israeli extremist who was motivated by Jewish fundamentalism, which as a Jew I find really appalling that was the closest we've ever got to peace, and it was our very own religious fundamentalists that stopped that from happening. I don't think that Israel does currently have its doors open for peace. Benjamin Netanyahu has made his voice opposed to the two-state solution very often. Israel is under the control of a minority settler population who are not willing to give up on the land of Judea and Samaria, which is land that needs to be given up in order to achieve peace. So I just don't think this is true. And yes, I don't think Hamas has its doors open for peace either. But this does not change the fact that Israel is culpable for also this current situation in which it is not willing to negotiate because it views the entire land as its own. Look at the nation-state law. The Judea, Samaria, Golan, everything, it's all meant to be exclusive Jewish sovereignty.
Okay, so let's talk about the history for a second. To suggest that the last Israeli prime minister who's in favor of peace was Yitzhak Rabin, I'm sorry, but it's just historically inaccurate. Shimon Peres, who was Yitzhak Rabin's partner in the peace plan, was prime minister. Ehud Barak, who is so far to the left that he makes Yitzhak Rabin look like a piker, was the prime minister and offered a peace deal in 2000. Ehud Olmert offered an incredibly generous peace deal, much greater even than the 2000 peace deal, rejected by Arafat and Mahmoud Abbas. So that's just historically inaccurate. The idea that Yitzhak Rabin was simply willing, even at the time, this is not even what the Oslo Accords say. The Oslo Accords really kind of embody some of the things that I was saying about a gradualistic process of surrender of some parts of the land, which is why you still have areas A, B, and C. When it comes to the idea that Israel as a whole is somehow culpable for a terrorist group that calls for its extermination, running into its center and murdering 1,500 Jews is deeply immoral. That's deeply immoral. You're not talking about people who are arguing in favor of some sort of land for peace settlement. The people who ran in are arguing for the extirpation of every Jew from the region. Every Jew. And as far as the idea that Israel is somehow ethnically intolerant as opposed to its neighbors, that's untrue as well. Israel is 20% Arab. Gaza has 0 Jews. 0. The Palestinian Authority has 0 Jews living under its authority, nor could they be trusted to have Jews living under their authority, given the fact that when Jews accidentally drive into Ramallah, they're in danger of being lynched, which is certainly not true of the tens of thousands of Palestinians who every single day are given work permits into Israel, including, by the way, people from the Gaza Strip who had work permits into Israel, some of whom then went back and gave information to Hamas on the specific locations and number of people in each house in these various moshavim, those are the villages, in the Gaza envelope. So to suggest that it's Bibi Netanyahu's fault that Hamas murdered 1,500 people, again, ignoring the fact that Hamas has been firing rockets on Israel continuously for about a 17-year period at this point, spanning governments of both the left and the right. Bibi Netanyahu wasn't even prime minister a year and a half ago. It was Yair Lapid, who is very much to the left. So to make the argument that somehow Israel has a responsibility to make a quote-unquote two-state solution with the current partners is totally crazy. Who's the partner? It would be one thing to argue if there was a liberal-minded partner that actually sought peace. But what you're talking about is a Palestinian Authority. The most liberal partner that is there is the Palestinian Authority, which right now, today, is paying Hamas terrorists a stipend for having killed Jews. Those are not people you can make a peace deal with.
I mean, I understand that Hamas is not a group you can make peace with, but I do think that Israel has made a concerted effort to destroy every group it could possibly make peace deal with. In 2019, Netanyahu said that the best way to stop Palestinian statehood, which is his aim, was to fund and empower Hamas in order to further the divide between Gaza and West Bank. This is what he believed should be done in order to prevent Palestinian statehood. And second, when you talk about Ehud Barak, as being a leader who was very willing to open a peace deal, I think that the reason why the 2000 peace deal failed was because ultimately Israel was not willing to give up control over the Temple Mount, which is for Muslims the Alaska compound, which is something as a secular Jew I think should have been given up in order for peace. But I can understand that religious people might struggle with that. But at the same time, I think that Arafat was under a condition where he could not have given up permanently sovereignty over Alaska compound because he would have had a fatwa against him.
Okay, so your argument is actually my argument, which is that Arafat could not have accepted a peace deal offered to him because his own people would have murdered him for having made any sort of peace deal, which, by the way, I agree with. I think that's true.
Not any sort of peace deal, a peace deal that gave up the Temple Mount. And I would have liked...
Okay, so the idea that, first of all, we should point out that having been on the Temple Mount multiple times,
I've tried. I dressed up as a Muslim to try and get onto the Temple Mount.
Well, yeah,
there's a picture of that happening.
By the way, you don't. So, if you'd like the hookup, I can make it happen. It's not difficult. All you have to do is walk up a particular tunnel, and you can go out onto the Temple Mount. Anyone can, but only Muslims can pray there. Only Muslims can pray on the Temple Mount. That is the current law.
I went on the wrong day. It wasn't open to foreigners that day.
But
I tried anyway.
I'm just telling you, it is a fact of the matter. I've seen people arrested for attempting to pray, to open a prayer book that is in Hebrew on the Temple Mount. Only Muslims can pray on the Temple Mount. The Islamic Waqf is in technical control of the Temple Mount. So to put aside the politics of the Temple Mount for a second, once again, the argument that I'm making is that there is no party on the other side. Please name the party on the other side with which the Israelis should currently negotiate.
Not currently, because as I said,
so then
Israel has tried. Israel has assassinated leading Arab academics, leading Palestinian academics. During the Nakba in 1948, Israel kept largely rural areas in the Galilee intact, but they went after urban areas where there were Palestinian academics. There had been a concerted effort to make sure that I think...
You're saying the war strategy of the Israelis in 1948 was to go after Palestinian academics?
Not academics,
they went
after urban Palestinian life.
It turns out that wars typically take place in heavily urbanized areas and not in open fields.
I mean, it was a largely rural area at the time, so I don't think that's right either. So,
well, I mean, that happens to be right. The biggest battles around the 1948 War of Independence, the Battle of Latrun, which is a battle between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem to open the road to Jerusalem. There were hotly fought battles in the streets of Safed, Tzfat. So, I mean, there are battles in every populated area of the region, clearly, because it was a war for the establishment of the State of Israel. So,
80% of the Palestinian population was depopulated, which is unusual.
First of all, not particularly unusual considering that the Allies, including this country, promptly after World War II depopulated Poland to the sound of 2 million Germans depopulated from Poland back into Germany, repatriated back into Germany that nobody ever talks about. Nobody's talking today about the fact that right now...
Okay, I think we need to wrap up there.